Meeting of Thursday, December 19th. Anybody at home that wants to participate in this, you can go on the agenda for tonight, and you'll get all the Zoom information you need, and you can chime in if you need to be. Other than that, we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh,
Ready.
did I cheer so
Adoption of the agenda. Any new, old?
No.
No. Oh, well. Public comment? Not yet. Select board announcements.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Town administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I have a couple of employment matters, or several employment matters for the board's consideration tonight. The first one is that Matthew James, who has been the town's planner for about 5 months, recently submitted his resignation to the town. He has another job offer that he has accepted, and I would ask the board to accept his resignation.
So moved with regret.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you. And then secondly, that has created a situation where the administrative staff has looked for how to provide an interim town planner for the town's planning purposes, primarily someone to work with the planning board. And we are recommending that that be Margaret McIntyre. She's currently a certified code enforcement officer. She's also been working as a planning assistant with the planning staff and the planning board. She's continually demonstrated her ability to take on new projects, new responsibilities. So I think she is uniquely positioned and qualified to take on this interim planner position. And I ask that you support the recommendation of the administrative staff.
Absolutely, with divine pleasure.
Would it be appropriate for public
Yeah,
comment now? If not, I don't.
No, wait till Jane seconds it, then I'll.
I second.
All right.
Okay,
Any discussion? That would be you, Amy.
okay, thank you. Amy Hybel, the Chair of the Planning Board. I just want to say that I have just two things to say. One is Margaret is a phenomenal staff person. She's proven herself over and over again. She's a hard worker, she's diligent, and she's smart. And we're lucky to have her. That said, I hope we can keep her. And the reason that I say that is I think the planner's job is one of the most difficult jobs in town, aside from the two administrators. It requires sometimes 40, 50, 60-hour work weeks. And some of that is because you're being asked to not only staff the planning board, but also staff various committees and town projects. You know this. I'm putting it out in the public arena because I just think it needs to be said. I ask that you not overload the planner with too many duties, because this person has a family and other things going on in their life. And it's important that we really respect the limits of what we ask from our staff. I say that because out of a selfish reason, I'd really like the staff person to focus as much as possible on the planning board. The planning board is a quasi-legal board. We make decisions that can cost the town money in legal fees. In fact, last night we just tabled an application for a wharf because we weren't sure what our legal obligations and duties were. And we had two attorneys on the planning board, which we're really lucky for. Both disagreed. And having staff who is capable of understanding the legal issues, understanding how to research the legal issues, and has the time. Matt literally said he did not have the time to research past approvals for other docks at High Head, and so he couldn't tell us at the planning board meeting or in his findings why those other docks had been approved, which would have made a big difference to us as we sat in review. So it was unfair of the applicant, and it was unfair to the board, and ultimately unfair to the taxpayer in the town, not to be able to answer those questions because the staff did not have time. So the planner really represents the town, not only legally, but for the applicants, and it's only in fairness that I ask that you really are just mindful that the planner, hopefully his first allegiance is to the planning board, and that person be able to devote as much of their time as possible. Second, with regard to Margaret, she is super bright and super dedicated. She knows this town. She's exactly the person that we want. So let's train her. Let's not only not overburden her with other duties, but let's give her time to develop her skills and pay for her to do that. And she'll stay with us, and we will all benefit from that. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Amy. I agree on a couple things. One is that Margaret's great, but she has a young family, so we shouldn't work her too hard. And Mark absolutely spoiled us. I mean, he is fantastic at the job, and he was there for everything. So, I mean, fully understood.
No. Anybody else on this? All right. All in favor?
Yeah.
And the next item is that we have had a vacancy with Gina Perot leaving us, or Gina Caldwell, I'm sorry, when she recently left her position as Recreation Director and Community Services Coordinator. So we have been undergoing an interview process. It did involve Selectwoman Jane Covey and another member of our Recreation Department, Tom Mahoney, myself. We interviewed 5 applicants. We received 8 applications. Very high-quality candidate pool. I have to say, we were very impressed with the candidates. But one stood out, and we definitely were unanimous in our recommendation to the full board that the town hire Katie Neal as our next Recreation Director and Community Services Coordinator. She is highly qualified. She has a master's degree. She's had a lot of experience working with youth, working with outdoor organizations. She's currently been serving as the interim executive director of the Harpswell Heritage Land Trust. She's going to be able to develop some outstanding partnerships and projects for the town and continue on with, the great work that Gina has done in her position here. So again, I ask the select board to support the recommendation of the interview team, and perhaps Selectwoman Covey would like to add to the recommendation.
I don't think there's much to say that you haven't already, Christy. I think we're fully behind this recommendation and look forward, if approved, to having Katie join us soon. She's very excited about the job, and she too lives in Harpswell, has been a patron as a mother of the services of the Recreation Department, so knows it well coming in.
I think the team made a good choice, and I enthusiastically move.
A second.
Any discussion? I don't see any. All in favor?
Great, thank you. And I think the last item, the town signed a contract with a company to begin the revaluation project, and part of that beginning of the process is to develop guidelines that the company will follow. I think there's a question from the assessing department whether one member of the select board would be involved with the assessing staff as it meets with the company, as it establishes these guidelines, and then if there's a situation that involves all 3 of the select board members needing to be involved, we'd make that happen. But you are the assessors in Harpswell, and we do think it's important that one of you represent the Board of Assessors in this process of developing these guidelines early on.
I
So
agree. We are the assessors.
you have an assessor's agent, and you have a
Correct, yeah.
company now that's being hired to do a revaluation, but you still need to stay
over it.
connected to the process.
I've already
So
been in meetings with her.
Oh, I threw your hat in already?
Well, no, she hauled me into it.
Oh, okay.
So I think the chair is
Yeah,
willing,
Chris,
if the
that
other
would be
two
Sounds like he is.
colleagues would like to support
Oh, I
that.
wholeheartedly agree with that.
Okay.
Drag, hauled.
Do we need a formal? I nominate the chair. Okay.
Okay, I think it's the consensus of the
Yes.
board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set.
You good?
Thank you.
Consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes and a road name, which I move Holly Ledge, by the way, election registrar appointments, committee appointments, and the authorization of the warrants.
Second.
All in favor? That's easy. And we have a wharf in front of us. Lauren and Brian Greenberg wharf application, 252 Gun Point Road, map 38, lot 38. I believe you're up, Tim.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Forrester with Flycatcher, here on behalf of the applicants at 252 Gun Point Road. We did have a site visit with the code officer. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight, so you get to listen to me. No one showed up at the site visit that I'm aware of. I was there for probably 20 minutes or so, and then had to get to my daughter's school commitment, so. Anyway, so there was a dock on this parcel before. It must have been old because there wasn't much left, and that was before the storms. So in general, the site that they had originally picked was fairly good. We are utilizing portions of the same footprint. We were able to slide it a little further to the south in order to make sure that we're maintaining a 25-foot setback from the property line. The proposed design is a 6 by 42-foot pier with a 3 by 44-foot ramp and a 10 by 20-foot float, pretty standard float size. One abutter, the butter to the north, did reach out to me, concerned about where it would be located in relation to their structure. And if you can see on the Google Earth image, you can tell that their pier goes straight out, but then their ramp comes out at an angle. And if you look a little further closer to the north, there's some subtidal ledge that they have to navigate in and around. But I did reassure them that, there's well beyond 50 feet between the two floats, and it is, it does meet the riparian setback. So they seem satisfied with that. Project was approved by the Army Corps and the DEP, so I think that's the short story. There's a haul out as well for the float storage on site.
No reason to get your feet wet in Gun Point, is there? You pretty much jump from wharf to wharf. I'm good. You good?
It's okay.
All right, make it easy. I move to approve the application. As the harbor master indicates, there's no hazard to navigation, no injury to rights in relation to fishing, fouling, or navigating.
Just make a statement. I want to make sure you have the correct map and lot number. The planning board, I believe, looked at this last night.
Amy,
and-
would you go to the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to make sure you have the correct map and lot number.
I've got 38,
Didn't we look
38.
at this last? Yeah, and I don't think it was correct, but this may be correct, but I just want to make sure you're correct on it.
What have you got, Tim?
38, not 38?
Okay, all right, if that's what he says. Didn't we have a?
Not this one. It's
Okay,
a different
all
one.
right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody second it?
Second.
Anything else? All right.
Got
All in
lost in
favor?
the weeds there. Nice.
Yeah, we go.
Thank you very much.
Abner Point and Bethel Point vulnerability assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Select Board. My name is Will Haskell with Goral Palmer, and we've been working on the vulnerability assessment plan for Bethel Point and Abner Point roads. Got a clicker here somewhere. So we've been working on this for a little bit. We're trying to wrap this project up here by the end of the year. We had a public meeting a couple weeks ago, and we'll have this meeting tonight, and then we've got a final report that we'll be wrapping up and submitting by the end of the year. Just to run down through presentation tonight, so go through a few things. There's a couple slides here that Mary Ann Namph touched on at the public meeting. I'm not going to go through these first few slides. So those were more applicable to the public meeting that we had. But again, this is kind of the summary of the various meetings that we've had on this project. So we had a kickoff public meeting on January 31st, which was right after the January storm event. So it was pretty pertinent at the time because of what had just happened out there on both these roads. So we had a status update meeting in June. And then again, just had a public meeting again, the second public meeting on December 9th. Just a quick run through on the goals. So basically looking at both Bethel Point Road and Abner Point Road, looking at options for making those roads more resilient. Specifically on Bethel Point Road, it's at Hen Cove, and at Abner Point Road, it's basically in the vicinity of the boat ramp at the head of the cove. We've looked at multiple options. We'll get into that in a little more detail as I go through my slides. We've really kind of been tying our work to the Maine Won't Wait plan and recommendations there in terms of what to look at in terms of sea level rise. Ultimately, we've got a couple different options on each road that we'll go through in more detail. And then the final report will also include some additional detail on permitting requirements for the options that we come up with. And we've prepared some preliminary opinions of probable construction costs for our various options, which I think you've seen in your packet, but we'll go through those again tonight. So Bethel Point Road at Hen Cove, just some basic information of that site. There's a culvert there that was replaced in 2013, 12-foot span, 10-foot rise, concrete box. Road elevation over that box culvert is around elevation 9.5. Just to talk a little bit about elevations, every elevation that I'm going to refer to tonight is based on NAVD 88 datum. It's not based on the tidal datum. NAVD 88 is about 5 feet lower than what you see for your tides that you see on your tide charts, just for informational purposes. FEMA flood elevation at this location is elevation 12, so a little bit over the road by 3.5 feet. Causeway over this culvert is about 170 feet long or so, and we looked at several different options here. So we looked at raising the road 3.9 feet. Might seem like an odd elevation, but that's part of the Maine Won't Wait plan, is looking at managing a sea level rise of 3.9 feet by 2050 or 2100, I believe. So we also looked at increasing the span of the culvert to 25 feet. Option 2 is basically the same in terms of looking at 3.9 feet, but putting in a bridge that spans the crossing there at 50 feet long. Option 3 is actually looking at raising the road elevation to the FEMA flood elevation of elevation 12, so raising it up a bit higher. And then finally, we did look at an alternative, which would basically extend a road around the cove. We basically discarded this for a number of reasons, just because it would be extremely expensive. It's quite a long route around there, plus it involves several private properties, as well as some conservation land trust land and some trails. So we did not go into that option in great detail. This is the flood map that shows, I don't know if I've got a pointer on this or not. Guess not. Guess it's just a clicker. Basically showing the flood elevation going over the causeway there. Elevation 12. It's a VE zone, which is it's a velocity zone or a wave. It's impacted by waves. And then on the far side of the causeway, it drops back down to elevation 11. Lost my clicker. Oh, just took a while, that's all. Sorry about that. This is going to be hard for people to... Sure.
Did the water go over that bridge?
It did.
It did?
January 10th and 13th. I'm not sure on both, but at least one of those, it did go over the top. There's video of
I've
it.
never seen it where it was tore up like that. That looked like it was taken somewhere else. Was that bridge that showed it all broke up? I don't think so.
I've got a picture at the end of my presentation that shows the,
'Cause I don't know if I've explained it to you, but when they put the railings in. for
Hey,
the
Ron.
bridge after we did it,
Ron,
I'd be glad to, anything I can do, they hear me. I didn't hurry up here for no reason. What I didn't probably explain, or maybe I did, I don't know, but when they did that road and they put the guide rails on it, they drove them I-beams in. Well, what happened was they drove it right through the fabric, and it tore out the fabric. So the water that went over it probably didn't hurt it, but what it was doing from all the banging and thrashing on there was taking the dirt right out from under the road. So I had them fix that. I think it was, I don't know if it was after that or when it was right now. But Weber went in and passed it, and I said, do something so it won't suck that dirt right out from under the road. Because that's what it did, and then it undermined it. It went right under, about 5 feet under the road. And it just let it fall apart. But I never saw it go over it, and I'd have to look at it tomorrow to find out if it looks like it's been stove up in the recent years.
yeah, it definitely went over. There's video of the water going over the road.
Okay, and I guess my other quick thought was when you said you might be able to go around that code, that's Bowden College land, isn't it?
I'm not sure of the
Yeah,
ownership there.
Bowden
but
College,
there's
I'm pretty
two-
sure.
There's two properties in there, and
Yeah.
then there's some trails and.
Yeah, that's right.
And land trust land in there
So,
as well.
just wanted to bring that up, make sure.
So these are probably a little bit hard for everybody to see on this screen here. This option is basically showing raising the road up 3.9 feet above the highest astronomical tide line, which is around 6.7 here. So you add 3.9 feet to that, a little over 10.6 or so. It would be the new elevation of the road. And adding a bigger box culvert. So as I said, I think the existing box culvert out there is 12 feet wide. The one that's shown in this drawing here is doubling that width, so it would be 25 feet wide. And hard to see. Let's see if I can get this. There it is. Let me see if I can get that to work. I just don't want to get anybody. Yeah, it doesn't show up on the screen. It does show the FEMA flood elevation on that map as well, highlights that, I believe, in a green line. But this option here, basically the same thing, just showing a 25 or 50-foot span bridge, so a little bit bigger. And then this option here is essentially raising the road elevation up to the FEMA flood elevation. The importance of these is when we get into the cost estimates, it significantly changes the cost estimates as we kind of go from option 1, 2, and 3. The cost estimate increases. So I'm going to need to get to my hard copy here so I can, because I'm not going to be able to read the cost estimates from that screen. All right, so option 1, raising the road 3.9 feet with a 25-foot span, is just under $3 million. So that includes, raising the road up. It also includes a 20% contingency, just because there's a few things that we don't have detailed survey and things, so we don't know all the details. But so we include a contingency that's fairly significant at this level of a cost estimate, and it also includes engineering and permitting fees as well, estimated engineering and permitting fees. So right around 2.95 million for that option. Option 2, there we go, is again raising the road 3.9 with a 50-foot span bridge. Total project cost goes up to around 5.1, just under $5.2 million. Option 3, come on, there we go. This is raising the road up to that FEMA base flood elevation of 12. Not raising it up higher than that, but raising it up to that elevation with a 25-foot span is about $3.65 million. So, and if we wanted to put the 50-foot span bridge in there, that would just go up higher.
Some big numbers. Ooh.
They are big numbers. And there's permitting challenges with every single one of these options, because if you can imagine, raising the road up higher is going to require going out into the resource on both sides of the road as you go across that causeway. And there are going to be permitting implications with doing that. So, and there would be a pretty significant permitting phase during that work if you were to decide to proceed with one of those projects. And we would have to spend a fair amount of time back and forth with the DEP and the Army Corps to get those projects, or any one of those projects, permitted. I'll get into another option that's a potential for this road as we get into the Abner Point Road project. We've been, because of the costs, and we've been looking at some what I will call alternative, portable alternative options that might be a good solution for the town in the short run. And we'll get into that here as I move to Abner Point Road. So with Abner Point Road, again, just some background information. The boat ramp at the head of the cove was replaced in 2019. The road elevation at around the boat ramp area is actually a little bit lower than on Bethel Point Road. It's around 8.2 or so. And the FEMA base flood elevation at that location is elevation 14, so it's even higher than at Bethel Point Road. And the main reason is because of the length of the cove coming up in there and the orientation of that. The waves come in at the end of the cove there quite a bit higher, a couple feet higher than what they do over at Bethel Point Road. As we look at Abner Point Road, there's a lot of constraints in there with existing properties, existing buildings very close to the road, the boat ramp, Luby Lane, some storage areas, other things that add some constraints and challenges to raising the road, because if you raise that road up any amount, you've still got to try and maintain access to all those other pieces of infrastructure, whether it's a cottage or a driveway or a Luby Lane, the boat ramp. You've basically got a fair amount of reconstruction to do at all of those areas to get that to work. That's fine for town property, Luby Lane, boat ramp. Town really can't do work on private property, so some of those other properties, it has some pretty significant impacts in terms of them being able to access those properties if we were to go and just raise the road up, you know.
We don't want to make their issues worse. We'd be in trouble if we do that. Yeah.
So I do know that I've met with one of the owners down there, and they're interested in raising their structures, but again, there's significant implications there for them to do that as well, costs and permitting and all kinds of things as well. So there's just a lot of, what I want to get across is there's a lot of constraints there because of the proximity of all this other infrastructure and buildings here. So resiliency options here, the first one we're going to look at, a little bit different than raising the road. So we did look at raising the road here as well. But we've looked at these, they're called portable flood barriers. And caught my eye on these. These types of barriers have been around for a while now. Interesting that town of Damascotta has actually, I believe, purchased a portable flood barrier for their public parking lot and the improvements that they've been doing on their waterfront up there. And they've purchased one of these portable flood barriers as part of that system for trying to minimize sea level rise flooding and storm surge flooding in that public parking lot there that's right off the main street. We actually looked at the same barrier that they're using up there, and really couldn't make that work here. The barrier's quite wide, the base of it's quite wide. Initially thought that we might be able to put it on the Mackerel Cove side of the road, basically take up one lane of the road and leave one lane of the road open during flood events. The challenge is that let's see if my map shows this. If you look at the head of the cove here, you basically have water coming in during these storm events from both sides. So you really can't just block it on one side of the road. You basically have to be able to block it on both sides. So just a portable flood barrier on one side of the road just doesn't work. So we found another option that is a narrower barrier, and I'll show you some pictures here in a minute, that could be put along both sides of the road. Again, doesn't help out the private property on either side, but it could maintain emergency vehicle access through this area during flooding events, so you could maintain emergency vehicle access and people getting in and out of the road. So it would be an improvement to public safety, but it doesn't protect the private property on either side. So I'll show you some pictures here. So this flood barrier is called a box wall. It's basically plastic barriers that kind of lock together. To put these along both sides of the road, we would need about 1,000 feet of this stuff, basically 500 feet on either side of the road. You would leave about a 10 to 12 foot lane in the middle to allow you to drive vehicles in. It would just be one vehicle at a time. You wouldn't be able to have people pass in there or whatever, but it would provide that emergency access and people to be able to get in and out of there. So you would basically install these on either side of the road, and it would keep the road basically free from flooding. There's several different heights. Height we would be looking at here would be a 40-inch, almost 4 feet, just under 4 feet high. So it would essentially get you the 3.9 feet that the Maine Won't Wait plan is looking at. It wouldn't get you up to the FEMA flood elevation. And so it would, this is a picture of a gentleman just holding one of these pieces that would essentially get deployed. You would have to have several people at least to deploy these things in advance of an event. You couldn't do it once it got flooded. You'd need to do it in advance of it being flooded. Basically takes a couple people to deploy 1,000 feet that we would need here. Would take about an hour and a half to deploy with a couple people. You'd need to have these on a truck or load them onto a truck and deliver them to the site, and then deploy the barrier before an event was to occur. Again, not a perfect solution, but it is a solution, and when you see the cost, you may say, gee, that looks a lot better than raising the road, because they're significantly less expensive than raising the road, but there is a manpower requirement to deploy these things and plan for it when you know that events coming down the pike, basically. So, see if I can get my. Yeah.
Have you seen any of these installed anywhere?
I have not seen them physically installed. We're working on a meeting with this company. We met with the company that Town of Damascotta purchased, so we've got pictures and videos of them that one being installed.
Yeah, I just want to bring up the fact that we had rocks down on Ocean Street that were 5 feet in diameter, and the water and the wind just blew them like they were nothing. I can't see them standing very well.
So these have been tested to withstand a certain amount of debris. They're not going to withstand a rock that's 5 feet in diameter.
Yeah, but what I mean is it moved those, so I have a hard job believing that they're not going to move those.
Well, the way these things work is the piece that sits on the ground is designed so when that water comes in, the water pressure on that is basically holding this thing down to the ground. So once that water starts coming up, it's holding that system down.
Granite just goes right out when it's bad, you know. Just wondered if there was a place that we could go see one.
Yeah, I mean, they're relatively new here in Maine. I think, to my knowledge, the one up in Damascotta is the first one that I've seen of a substantial size. And they just purchased it and they haven't needed to deploy it yet. So it has not been utilized at this point. But again, it's an option. Just I felt like we needed to present it as an option, and you'll see as I get into the costs here why it might be of interest to you. So this is similar to Bethel Point Road. We're looking at raising the road 3.9 feet. So that was our second option that we looked at here. So we looked at the flood barrier for Abner Point. We also looked at raising the road, just like we did over at Bethel Point. And then, getting way ahead of myself here. Hold on a second. The other piece that we looked at, and we've talked about before, is I think everybody's aware that there's a storm drain culvert that goes under the road here that drains the ditch along Luby Lane out into the cove. And that culvert, 18-inch culvert, I believe, is the invert of that culvert, the bottom of that culvert is roughly about 2.5 feet maybe a little bit more than that, down below the top of the road. So what happens right now is when that tide comes up, if it starts coming up into that culvert, it backfeeds through the culvert into the ditch over on the Luby Lane side of the road and starts flooding out that area well before the water comes up over the top of the road. So one of the things that we would recommend as a relatively simple solution to that is to put what's called a tide gate on the outlet end of that culvert. There's a couple different options. On the left-hand side is a tide gate valve that's called a tide flex valve. On the right-hand side is a flap gate valve. And basically what those do, it's a check valve, basically. So allows water to flow out through the culvert, but does not allow water to flow back through the culvert. So that would actually help with the flooding on the Luby Lane side during lesser events that don't overtop the road. All right, so option one, which was the flood barrier. Estimated total project cost, and this includes the flood barrier and the tide flex valve and some other miscellaneous costs, but is roughly around $295,000. So just say round it to $300,000. Compared to option two, which is raising the road to elevation to 3.9 feet above the highest annual tide, and this is a slightly updated from what we submitted to you folks in your packet. So 1.5 to 1.6, $1.7 million or so to raise the road up to that 3.9 above the highest annual tide. So again, one of the reasons I wanted to present the flood barrier, $300,000, $1.7 million. This flood barrier could be used as well over on Bethel Point Road. Initially, we weren't thinking a flood barrier would work there because you've got the culvert, the big culvert under the road there. But if you were to line both sides of that causeway with this box wall flood barrier, you could keep the road open rather than having the road over top. So it is an option for Bethel Point Road as well. So it'd probably be fairly similar in cost to the $300,000 over there, because again, you need it on both sides of the road. We might have a little bit longer that we need to do there, so maybe the cost goes up a little bit. So that was really the reason why I wanted to give you that option as an alternative, just so you had something that might feel a little more realistic.
So,
But
are you recommending if it were to be at Bethel Point, that it would be the red one or the yellow one that you showed in the public?
it would have to be the red one
Have
that
to be
we
the red
just
one.
showed
Same
here,
reason for
because
both
the
sides.
one we showed at the public meeting would not allow, if you put it on both sides of the road, there
Same-
wouldn't be
same color.
any room to
Got it.
drive down the middle.
Got it,
So
yeah.
you would need to go with
Be
something
coming out.
similar to this red version. There are a couple different versions out there that would probably work here. It's just, this was the one that was
Sure.
easiest for us to kind of pull together for this meeting tonight.
Sure.
So I'm going to stop there before I go to my next slide and ask if there's any questions from the board or,
So far, so good,
okay.
sort of.
So really, the next step in this whole thing is to finish off our report, basically summarize these options. We'll pull them all together into a final report, present the final cost estimates and everything, and then I think we're essentially done with our scope at that point. But we'll be working with Mary Ann on that, and I'm assuming she needs to submit the report as well to the funding agency. But, so,
Any questions? Yep, Mike.
Yeah, I had one, actually, back on the, back on page,
Bethel Pointer.
yeah, Bethel Point, the last option, the last two options,
yeah.
they're, they have the same description, raise the road.
Yeah, that got changed in my latest report too. I apologize. There were a couple minor revisions that I made in my,
Okay,
so, yep.
that's good.
Spike Hybel, Harpswell Neck. Going to Bethel Point, first of all, the Abner Point thing seems like a real problem because there's so much water on both sides that you're not allowing water in that sort of resides somewhere and then eventually goes out. You've got, if you have a norwesterly, you're going to have, or northerly, you're going to have tons of water.
There used to be one body of water, but that was all filled in. My
Right,
grandfather
and-
told me about the bridge being there.
Yeah, yeah. So that one seems like tough, and the homeowners on either side are, they're up. It's what are they? We're going to have the Gulf Shores kind of part of Harpswell there if they have to raise theirs, and they'll have boats to get out to the road. But anyway, that's that's a tough place to have a house. But anyway, going back to Bethel Point, my question was, I think you understood you. The culvert that's there now is a round culvert, or is it a box? It's a box. So and you would replace that? And what is the advantage of the box culvert, which I assume is concrete or something, versus actually taking the culvert out and having a typical posted bridge that allows water to flow through in all kinds of ways, and it just seems to me down the road, if we have to do again, when we're all out of here and there's somebody else who's got to deal with this stuff, that the bridge, that open structure is a little easier to deal with. Because once you put a big concrete box in the ground and then you fill, and you're talking about the side fill to get the right slope and all that stuff, that's, you don't want to have to take that out again. So I'm just curious as to why the bridge is so much more expensive. And is it, money well spent now, so it's more flexible in the future? I don't know.
Yeah.
Free thinking on that.
That came up in conversation a couple of years ago, the span bridge.
The bridge is generally more expensive. Well, it's bigger, number one. It's a bigger span. Building the abutments for a bridge they're just a little bit different than a box culvert, which is structurally sound. All is kind of one unit that's delivered. So it's there's a fair amount more excavation for the bridge to build those abutments to support the bridge. So that's really the difference in the cost. I don't necessarily disagree with you that a bridge may be a better option there. It's just a matter of what's realistic cost-wise.
There's a boat launch at the end of that road. I don't know how large the boats are that they bring down to launch there, though. So the bridge would have to be fairly substantial.
Yeah. And if you recall, maybe, I don't know if it was at our June meeting or if it was at the original meeting, but there was a lot of discussion from the public at I think it was at the initial meeting, about another issue further down Bethel Point Road that floods out as well. So there was a lot of questions in terms of why we were addressing this and not that. So there are other issues on Bethel Point Road that also need to be addressed during these big storm events as well, to keep it open.
Yeah. But first things first.
Right.
All right. Any other questions before he moves on to the next? Don't go anywhere.
I know.
You all set, Jane and David, with,
Yeah.
Thank you.
all right?
I don't like it, but I'm all set.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we're moving up to Peabody Road now.
I really wanted Will to be able to update the board on where we're at in that project. The board had originally made a decision to sole source with Allstate Construction, which did the Basin Point Road project. And Allstate proposed a different material for the kind of, I guess, the base pavement. And so that generated some more discussion, and I think you finally have put together the drainage improvements specifications, and you just want to kind of talk about next steps with the board?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So we had a meeting, I don't remember if that was a select board meeting or if it was just a
I think it was a workshop.
workshop, might have been a workshop meeting, with, I think, Goral Palmer was remote, or we
Yeah.
zoomed in, and I think Allstate was here.
Those kids.
Yeah.
So basically, to just give a summary, Allstate had some concerns about shallow bedrock along various portions of Peabody Road, and concerns that they might damage their milling equipment or their reclaim equipment if they did a full depth reclamation like we had originally proposed for the road. So they came back and recommended a shim and double chip seal solution for Peabody Road. So to accomplish that, there's still some other work that needs to be done, because they're proposing 2.5-inch thick layers of shim course, so that's 3 inches, and then a double chip seal, which adds a little bit more to that. But so by the time you add that on there, I mean, it's very similar to a reclaim at that point, where you've raised the surface elevation of the road, so you have to add new gravel along the edges of the road to back up that, and you also need to tie in the driveways all the way along there. Plus, there were some, we had made recommendations along with Ron Ponziani with multiple site visits out there in terms of cleaning out some of the ditches and improving the drainage, basically, in multiple locations along the road. So all that ditching work and the driveway tie-ins, there's some culverts. That wasn't included in the cost from Allstate for their shim and double chip seal. So basically, we revised our plans to take away the full depth reclamation. And what we did is we took Allstate's quote, which they had submitted to the town for their shim and double chip seal, which was $225,000. That also included the backup gravel along the edges, 1 foot wide along both sides of the road. And then we came up with a new estimate and revised plans and specifications for the drainage and the driveways. Our estimate for that work was $489,000. So you add that to Allstate's roadway improvements, and you come up with $714,000. They haven't priced our drainage improvements yet, so I think one of the next steps is to get them our plans and specs, so they can actually have their site contractor price out, the drainage improvements, the driveway tie-ins, the new culverts, the ditching. So they basically need to take our plans and specs and run it through their estimating to get that price. So that 489 may change. It could be lower, it could be more. But that would be the next step in this process, is to release those plans and specs to them so they can actually prepare the pricing for it. And then the other piece of it, which the town can decide which way they want to go, is we provided another price in the email that I think is in your packet of $727, which would basically include enough money for us to do some inspection work during the construction process, just to make sure that it's moving forward in accordance with the plans. So that's kind of a summary, where we are and what needs to happen next. Looks like Ron has something to say.
I always have something to say. Thank you. I'm the road commissioner in the town of Harpswell. I spent a lot of time on Peabody Road, believe me. And what Will didn't say is the ledge is right close to the road. It's right under the dirt. And we've all rotted it. I've rotted it. I have a 17-inch bit, masonry bit that I can put in my half-inch drill. And I did that on Basin Point. That's how I was able to tell them where the ledge was. And we just mark it with blue paint. But it's at ground zero on Peabody Road. And I explained to them earlier this year that there won't be a lot of ditching done because you can't dig down in the ground, it's ledge. And there won't be a lot of culverts put in because the only one that's going to be put in is under Tim Halpin's driveway. We're going to remove the one that dumps water down behind Donette Goodnow, her trailer, because I think that's what happened was, and Christy brought it up to me. I said, I don't know why they ever went across the road anyway. And she said, well, because there was never any houses there before. But now that people have built there, and I said, that makes sense. That's what happened. So we got to get it back where it used to go and get it out of there. But if we don't go with a chip seal, and I've talked with two guys that one of them does all the bidding for Allstate Paving, and the other one works on estimates with him too, is you can't, the only thing, see, there's a rule too in paving, you can't pave over unless you got 14 inches of soil under you. You can't do that. And I learned that through Crooker, because when we did Lane Road, we was up there and he said, you know, we're gonna have to take out 14 inches of ledge to pave that road. I said, why would you do that? The lawn's about 2 feet higher than the road. It's a lot cheaper to just tear the tar up and put gravel in there and build it up to grade and go through with it. I mean, it's mathematical, it's easy. So they said, well, you'd want to do that? I said, anything that saves the town money, I want to do. And so they did. They said, as long as you don't mind, we'll do it. And there was no time. They had it done. They were trying to hurry to get done. So they raised it, but you got 7.7 I think, on Peabody Road. I think that's $170,000 just on gravel if you decide not to go with chip sealing. Because somehow you got to come up with 14 inches above that ledge, right?
Ron, I think we already decided to go with chip seal. We'd already made that decision.
Okay, and I know Christie talked to me about it, but
Okay.
I just want people to know that's listening, don't know what the story is. You have to know that. You have to know that you can't pave over 5 inches from the ledge, and it would cost a small fortune. He did the math right there while we were checking it, so it's no little thing. When I kept hearing the numbers, I got thinking, maybe we just need to buy a helicopter and park it on each side of them places to get people out with. We got some good rescue around here. I'd like to see them get something good to work with.
All right. Are you all set with Peabody Road?
Yeah, unless you've got any questions.
Just, hey, marching orders, get it to Allstate?
Yep, so just get them the plans and the specs and get a price for them, from them to do the drainage work and the,
And maybe this summer it'll get done?
yep.
So we're at a one-stage plan now, not a two-stage.
Yep.
One stage.
It's a one-stage
Gearing
plan.
up.
It'll be
for
all
one
done
stage.
together at
Yeah.
one time.
Putting more money in at the annual town meeting, yes.
Right.
Great, great. Okay,
All right,
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Draft work scope for Central Fire Station study.
So a couple weeks ago, the board discussed a possible consultant study for the central station, Central Emergency Services Building. And the consultant's name is Neil Courtney. He attended one of the town's Fire and Rescue Planning Committee meetings. So Mike Drake, our fire administrator, and myself had conversations with Mr. Courtney via phone to try to identify what the town was looking for. So the board looked at a proposal 2 weeks ago, and you asked for the Fire and Rescue Planning Committee to weigh in on that proposal. The one that you're looking at tonight is the update. The committee wanted a couple of additional items added to the initial proposal. One of them involved looking at more data over the past 5 years for Harpswell Fire and Rescue calls, including paramedic calls. And then the other item that the committee wanted was figures showing what the cost would be to staff 3 stations with municipal firefighters versus the central station, and then the cost of upgrading 3 stations and how that might compare to the cost of the central building. Mr. Courtney is not a consultant that deals with construction-related costs, so he declined to include that in his proposal. But he did include costs that relate to personnel comparisons. So that's bullet number 7 on the latest proposal. I did share this with all the members of the Fire and Rescue Planning Committee. It was a 3-2 vote at the committee level, and there were a couple of members who weren't present at that committee meeting. So this is the information back to the board. I know members of the committee are here who may want to speak to it, and it's here for your consideration. And Mr. Courtney could not make the meeting tonight. He had another commitment. He could not participate remotely based on that commitment.
Under number 6, have Buxton added to that, because they have 3 departments. They had 4 at one time. It's a very similar situation to us.
That meeting, I was out of town. I couldn't make it, and I'll say up front, I'm not in favor of going with this consultant. We've been consulted everywhere in this town lately, and we have enough. We've been working on this since 2016, and we have enough knowledge in town amongst our fire departments to, any data that needs to be brought up, it's available. And some of the people have been working on the cost estimates for 3 separate fire stations and all manned. I don't have the numbers here, but I've seen them. Mm-hmm. So it may be my recommendation that I'd make a motion that we do not hire this consultant.
We have the 2008 study, too, which was, I don't know how many pages long that is, but it's quite detailed.
Yeah. A lot of things have happened since then.
Right. I mean, a lot of things are the same in it,
Yeah.
but situation has changed. No, you're right. We could consult this thing to death.
Like I said, a lot of us been working on this for a long time, and this is what we came up with. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to it. Oh, does anybody have a second on my motion before we allow?
I'll second it.
All right.
Then we can have discussion.
All right. Let's open up for discussion now. Don't look around, Dave.
Yes, good evening. Dave Mercier, Fire Chief Harpswell, Fire and Rescue. Our department's done considerable work in looking at developing the information that's been requested that the consultant do. And we found that this information is all available to us. We've gone to the main fire reporting system. We've downloaded information from them all the calls in town, locations. We can, for the committee, create this information. We have taken the strategic committee's numbers and projected the cost of personnel, whether you're staffing a central station or you're staffing 3 individual stations. And again, that's more information we can provide as well. I've looked at Neil's reports. Neil did assessments for, if you go online, they're available. He did a report for the town of Casco. He did a report for the town of Thomaston. And in those reports, what you learn is the majority of the information that he has in those reports comes from the departments. It's not coming from outside sources. In many of those reports, typical to Casco, he talks about spending a good deal of time with the fire chief, getting information, and that information he used in developing his report. So I feel we have the same capacity here to provide that information. So it would be unfortunate for the town to have to buy back information that we're going to provide to the consultant, who is in turn going to give us a report of our own information for considerable amount of money. I think, again, as Kevin pointed out, I think we have the depth, we have the talent in the departments as well as the committees to create the information that's being requested so that we can hopefully answer a lot of these questions and let people evaluate the facts. Simply say, these are the facts, be in agreement with the facts and evaluate them. So I certainly support Kevin's position that I think we can do this. We did not use a consultant when we did the paramedic program. We have a very successful paramedic program. We did not use a consultant when we did the municipal firefighter program. Again, I think you would agree we have a very successful program there. So I believe we've demonstrated as members of these departments that we can do this work for the town and it can be successful. And I encourage you to let us do it.
Yep.
I'm Harvey Poe. I'm the rescue chief for Harpswell Neck. Chris Heinig and I have been working with David to gather the data that he's been talking about. They are readily available. Here, for example, are Harpswell Neck's calls. And really what Neil would do is gather information from us and then sell it back to us. We don't need that. We can collect and analyze the data ourselves perfectly well. If the other departments are not conversant with how to do it, we'll be happy to show them, do it for them, whatever. But all of the information is there. So I also support Kevin's motion.
Kathy Hurst. I'm the treasurer of the Orson Bailey Island Fire Department and also the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee that has provided a lot of the information from Orson Bailey Fire Department that you have been reading. And I certainly agree that I don't want to get information back from somebody just regurgitating back, and that's not what we want. And if we think that that's all Neil can do, then we don't want him. We want an external, fair, expert consulting, just like, as we've pointed out, often is used by the town, rightfully so, to provide us insight from not just within the town, but somebody who has expertise about this problem throughout the area, maybe the nation, and can shed that kind of light on it. So we strongly advise that this makes sense because we're talking about a lot of money here. And before we do that, we'd like to know that there's consensus across the three fire department's consensus within the FRC to move in the same direction. And that's what we'd like to get out of this. Thank you.
Thanks.
A couple of things I'd like to say. One is I was Harpswell Neck's first training officer, and we were able to make huge improvements in the fire insurance ratings and with our training and response times. And we were able to get the three departments to talk to each other and make sure they had the same hookups for their hoses and whatever, so they can do mutual aid. We have come a long way in making the three departments work together, and that's really all I want to see. And I want us all to work together and have everyone be safe and happy.
Well put.
Hello, Christine Donovan Hall. I'm with the Oars and Bailey Fire Department, past president, and also on the board presently. As it relates to cost, I just wanted to say $8,600 is not a lot of money to pay when you're talking about an outlay, a potential outlay of $5.1 million to the taxpayers to support the central building. Like Kathy said, we feel that, an expert that's outside could go a long way with providing a cost-benefit analysis we asked for, as well as the population density. It may or may not have changed from the survey that they did, the report in 2008, and also could give us an idea of response time. And I know there has been population growth, but it also could give us some information about response times and where the population is seated. There isn't that much population here on Mountain Road compared to the other parts of the town. In the 2008 report, they said that the three departments were ideally located to respond to their population. So some of our concern has to do with a central facility being located in Mountain Road with not much population to serve. So we asked that we could get an outside person to come in, and we have on, of course, on the roads and other things. And I just say that $8,600 is not a lot of money. And also we have to have supporting documentation if we go to a public meeting, and having professional or an expert that has that information to share with the taxpayers when they're considering to outlay money for $5.1 million, I think it would behoove the town to go in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks.
A couple of things. One is a central station, as opposed to upgrading the three departments that we have now, is a change in manpower substantially. So the money you save not building a central station goes into extra manpower, paid manpower at the three stations. So someone needs to, if the three departments, if the Fire and Rescue Committee are going to do that work, I'm fine with that. I mean, rather than hiring a consultant, if we can do it internally, definitely.
Well, I think part of that plan is a new fire station for Cundy's Harbor. So
I agree with that, absolutely. I think that's one of the things we need to make, and get a sprinkler system at Harpswell Neck that'll approved by the fire marshal, and improve these stations so people can stay there. That's where I would like to put our money.
Nelson Barter, Harpswell Neck Fire. I've always been an adamant supporter of placing a station here on the Mountain Road. It is equidistant from all areas of town. No, you're shaking your head. It is equidistant from North Harpswell, the southernmost coverage point of Cundy's Harbor's fire department, the northernmost coverage points of Oars and Bailey's fire departments. It would be a good location. As far as the money, I don't see this as a money issue. I see this as a time issue. I think we should be presenting this to the taxpayers to either vote it up or down next year. If we spend a whole lot of time with consultants, with more meetings, that sort of thing, we will not prepare our case for the taxpayers. And that's where we should be concentrating on. As far as the money goes, $8,000 doesn't seem much. Time is more important. And at least in the fire business, time is lives, because fires grow exponentially. In 1 minute, you have a wastebasket. In 2 minutes, you have a wastebasket and a chair. In 3 minutes, you have a room. In 4 minutes, you have half a house. That's how critical it is. As far as North Harpswell, a station here would be closer than our current station. As far as the Mountain Road, OBI, a station here is closer, less road time than coming out of their station. As far as Cundy's Harbor, the growth areas in this town are going to be North Harpswell, they're going to be Great Island, they're going to be Northern Oars Island. We know this. We know these things. We don't need to tell someone else so they can tell us back to us. These are the areas where the future is going to be problematic for us. And this is why, one of many reasons why, we need a station, preferably 24 hours manned, on the Mountain Road. This will reduce hazard to our citizens, and it's the best favor we can do to the citizenship of this town.
Thanks.
Are you going to speak again, Kathleen?
One of the main reasons that we're exploring the central facility relates to recruitment of volunteers. I am struggling to say that a central station is going to fix recruitment as it relates to volunteering, as well as having a paid staff. We already have 3 buildings that are situated from the last report that we did, ideally. I don't understand how adding a 4th building with the associated cost of staffing, turning the lights on, electricity and all that is going to solve the problem that we have with recruitment. That's my overall concern.
Right. Well, I'm actually going to kind of stop this right now because we're off track. Right now, we're discussing whether or not to hire a consultant.
Let me weigh in on that if there's not another public comment. I looked really carefully at this proposal from the consultant, and I was concerned the first time. I'm even more concerned now because I think that there are 2 things about it. That the list of activities we want the consultant to do, I came to the same conclusion that Dave mentioned when I looked at this. I said, we already know this, we already know this, we already know this. And also felt we'd be paying this person in part to learn about us and then to give it back to us. That's number one. The other thing about the proposal that we have is I do not see clear deliverables in that report, and that bothers me a lot. I am very concerned that it would be one that we'll get back and we won't not have learned anything. And let me tell you, I was a consultant in my life, and I've been in situations where I've done exactly what I think would be done here, and I don't want to see that for Harpswell.
I think if we can do it internally, this, but there are some questions that need to be answered. This probably isn't the right route to take.
As long as it pertains to the consultant. That's
What's on the table, yeah.
What's that?
Okay, I'm not sure that I was going to say.
Well, give it a shot.
Okay. I repeat that if this guy isn't the right consultant, do we want to look for another one? Do we have reason to want this? Now, I'm a PhD statistician by training. I would love to get my hands on the evidence and present it. This is my career. I have access to, I'm getting access to NVERS, the database. So if we can really do it, I'm raising my hand and stepping to the front, and
You're on. You're on.
really,
David,
No.
no, no. no.
Not with this consultant, but,
No.
exactly.
No, no.
no, but we need to, we have questions that need to be answered to compile
We
it.
have to, I believe we have to take a step back. We have to get clear on the questions that need to be answered. And I don't think that has happened yet. It certainly is not reflected here.
I guess that's
And-
what I'm saying. Yeah.
and-
Yeah. No,
and
I don't agree with
I-
this consultant.
Ask Kevin if bringing it back to the committee is the way to go.
Yes. Everybody will be there the next committee. I was out, Nelson was gone. And we'll have something to bring to the next select board meeting after our next Fire and Rescue Committee meeting.
All right.
At that point, I assume we're going to bring something ready to go to vote.
Makes
We
sense.
get about 200 years of experience amongst these firefighters.
Yeah.
They know what they're looking at. They know where we've been in the last.
We've got several
50
right
years.
here.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, on a personal note, 40 years ago, I was instrumental in joining two departments together. But we all said then that sooner or later, there's going to be a firehouse up here. Just because the volunteers aren't happening, the people moving to town aren't the type to volunteer. I have 4 new neighbors right now in the last 6 months. None of them are going to be volunteered for anything. They've aged out, so to speak.
Can I just get clarification? So we're talking about the FRC coming together and kind of putting a list of what do we need to know in order to provide the best emergency fire and rescue service for Harpswell.
But what I'm hearing tonight is that the FRC believes they can answer those questions. So,
I heard that too. I'll be very
yeah,
interested in hearing more
And-
about that.
Yeah, and I think
Is that what I'm
there's a lot of knowledge in the town in terms of where people live, what the population is, and the distribution and the demographics.
Yeah.
We have access to all of that, so I think we can put that together.
we
Well,
need to
the
do it.
clarification that I wanted was, are we going to start with, let's come up with the list of what we need to learn? Right?
Are you willing to help do that? So that was
Absolutely.
my point.
Absolutely.
We have all the knowledge, we have the Chief Mercer and Harvey, they put together the numbers, what the 3 stations would cost, and, you know, the numbers are ridiculous.
Yes, they are.
As soon as you see them, you realize.
Oh, I know.
Just the labor alone.
So are you saying, Kevin, that this is a question of putting together what has been learned along the way,
Yes.
what is known in a document? I would agree. If we put that together and then there are significant gaps that the committee thinks need to be filled, then we
Right.
could go to do that.
They can easily be filled, and we'll have public hearings on this.
Yeah.
And, you know, and being out in the community, I have to say, most people understand the need for a central, or municipal building, if you want to call it that. But, back to my point, right now, I had a motion that we do not hire this consultant, and I believe you seconded it.
I second it.
So, all in favor?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. All right. Sea level rise, grant application update.
Mr. Chairman, may I, before Mary Ann comes to talk about this, due to my, I would state at this point, while there's so many fire people in the room, I did poor planning on this agenda. Would you entertain me discussing agenda item 12 now with the fire department people in the room?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yep.
I know, good idea.
So, it should come as no surprise, the town paid for a new emergency communication system between the 3 towers and the departments and all the people. When we met with RCM, we were told, you know, after that first year, you should take the warranties and order spare parts. And we was intended on that, and it would be starting in May of 2025. bringing it before the select board now because you have to order the spare parts first in order for the warranty to be effective. And voters approved American Rescue Plan Act funds, and to complete that full obligation by 12/31/24, it would have to be committed in a contract. So Mac from RCM did present the year 2 through 5 warranty, and the spare, which grand total of that is $67,777 for 4 years of the warranty. The contract lists what that includes. I did have some conversations. I mean, when you read it, it seems like it excludes a lot, but we've already experienced a fire strike, a lightning strike. And he was there and
Yeah.
fixed all of that.
Well, it wasn't ours yet.
There was some technicality to that.
Yeah.
But anyways, and then ordering the spare parts would be $31,600, rounded up $31. So here before you this evening to approve going forward with the contract, unless there's information from the people in the audience to not go forward with this. And the spare parts is basically the request this evening. And I don't know if anybody wants to add anything. Please, you all know much more
Yeah,
about that
okay.
communication system than me.
I was going to say, when will this ever end?
Yes, Dave Mercy, Fire Chief Harpswell. I certainly encourage you to go forward with it. We've experienced some issues with this system, and that's required some equipment changes. We had problems at Crown Castle with water getting in a cable. We've had water in equipment. Unfortunately, we were online for 3 hours when lightning struck our tower during a time we were fighting a structure fire, which made it a bit inconvenient. Overall, there has been some glitches that occur with any electronic equipment, and to have that security behind us to know that, RCM's prepared to make those corrections is vital to that important communication. And RCM has been very responsive in my communication with them, no pun intended, about addressing any issues that we brought forward for them. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you.
The one thing I've discovered in the fire department is the communications they're the most important part of it. You need to be able to talk to each other.
Hi, Mike Drake, the Fire Administrator. When we met with Mac from RCM prior to installing the system, we went over the spare parts list. We was able to knock that down significantly because all of the equipment is so similar. So instead of having spare parts for every tower, we have spare parts that will fit each tower. If there was an emergency, there are parts, extra parts in the system currently that they could pull out and put in another tower. So they did reduce the spare parts quite a bit for us.
We want a motion to
Yeah, to accept the
approve,
31.
accept the proposal from Radio Communication Management, Inc.
Second.
Any discussion? Already had it. Oh, all in favor? Thanks,
Mr.
Terry.
Would you also entertain, that was for the warranty, but
Oh.
approving the purchase order for, since it's over the $5,000 minimum, we need a motion
For the
to
spare
approve
parts.
that for the spare parts as well.
And
So
move
moved.
it- And I second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. All right.
Okay,
Sea level rise grant application.
So you have a completed application in front of you, and I do want to thank Mary Ann Naif. She's the chair of the town's Conservation Commission and its Resilience and Sustainability Committee, and she was largely responsible for the grant that involved the town engineer being here earlier tonight and talking about some of the issues that related to Abner Point Road and Bethel Point Road. So Mary Ann is once again, has proposed to the board this application, and you did previously approve it. It was submitted yesterday, I believe. Was it yesterday?
Yes, it was.
Okay. But there's a modification from the last time it went to the board, so perhaps you could speak to that, Mary Ann.
Yes,
I was here the last time, we had an estimated proposal amount from the consulting firm of $74,000. We subsequently had which had been done through emails. And what subsequently had happened, we talked to them and we were able to talk and get a better idea of what we wanted and what they would be presenting with us. In fact, I included it with the grant. It did come in at $79,000. So what it does mean is we can get $75,000 from GoPIF. We will need $4,000 from Spira, in addition to the $5,000, or I'm sorry, $6,000 for the work the after work that is going to come as far as handling meetings with the town. We have now cooperation with the Holbrook's Community Foundation, with the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, and also HA, to present programs that are going to talk directly to the people that are going to be able to benefit of this. One of the big features of this project to do more mapping of what's going to happen in the future is because of all the large coastline, and we not only have the fishing community, but we also have older adults who are going to be dealing with this too. This is going to be an idea to be used when you're planning to make changes to account for sea level rise. So what we're looking at, let me get the right amount here. We're looking at $10,000 from Spira.
I think page 13 has your budget on
Just pulling
it.
it up here.
So I think your total project cost on page 13 is $85,000.
Correct.
And you're saying that the maximum we can get from the grant is $75,000.
Correct.
So previously, the board approved, was it $5,000 of Spira?
$5,000 from
But you're
Spira.
asking the board to approve another $5,000 as a
Yeah.
match? Yeah.
For a total of 10.
So I think page 13 is a very
Thanks for
summarized
summarizing that.
version.
Trying to make it
There's a
simple,
lot of
but it never
paper.
is.
There's a lot of paper.
I move that we approve another $5,000 from the Spira Fund to be matched for this grant.
Second.
It's like when my kids came back for increasing their allowance.
She's got a pretty good track record here
Oh,
in
yeah.
getting
Oh, yeah,
grants,
yeah.
so.
All in favor?
We have to wait till March, though, to find out about
Oh,
this.
this is
so
right.
It's a long time.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary
Thanks, Mary Ann.
Ann.
Thanks.
Memorandum of Understanding with Harpswell Community Broadcast Corporation.
So this is in front of the board. There is a slight modification from what we posted with the agenda. But essentially what this does is really summarize the town's goals, Harpswell Community Broadcasting's goals, where we have made some, progress on some of our goals and what some of our plans for the future are as well. So it's been a good, I think, way of putting on paper the issues that we've dealt with and that we continue to deal with over time. And we've seen some huge improvement in the financial reporting area. We really appreciate that. Our new staff member, Jim, has really helped us get these hybrid meetings running and is working closely with community television on the issues that may arise as we take over streaming, archiving, and those kinds of issues. So the one thing I want to note that changed from what was on the posted agenda is HCBC is interested in making some capital purchases in the coming year, and the town meeting in 2023 did authorize that the town's unassigned fund balance could be used with the expectation that those funds would be replenished when the town signs a new franchise agreement, that the money would go back to replace what is used by HCBC.
So the TV Board of Directors approved, without that latest part in there, but I think that's so minor that that's not a big deal.
I think this is really just being precise about the funding sources.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know that I need to recuse myself, but if you guys want me to.
Nah. All right.
So I move that we accept this update for the coming year of an agreement with HCBC in the town, and that we authorize either Kevin or yourself, Christie, to sign it.
With this change that I
Exactly, with the
mentioned
one that you.
tonight,
yes.
okay.
I'll second that.
All right. No discussion, all in favor?
Great, thank you.
All right. Get that out of the way, get that out of the way.
Donations. Do you want to read it?
What's that?
The donations.
Oh, it's all yours.
Oh, geez, thanks. We ready?
Always.
All right, these are donations. The West Harpswell Baptist Church donated $1,000 for heating. Michelle Barber donated $10 to the bandstand. Anonymous is $100 for the Cliff Trail. The bandstand donation box was $4,502.72. Ocean Waves Quilters donated, I'm losing track here, $1,150 for heating. Susan Crowell donated $1 to the bandstand. Elizabeth Hamill Miles Ham donated $500 to the bandstand. Anonymous was $20 for the Cliff Trail. I'm going to use a piece of paper here. And All Saints Chapel donated $500 for heating. Glenn and Beth Eisman, $100 for heating. Martha Simpson and Gary Meerdix,
Sure.
$200 for heating. Gretchen and Dexter Kemelowicz, $70 for heating. Kenneth and Christine Bailey, $80 for heating. Dale Robertson and Rhonda Peak, $500 for the heating. Sandra Galonka, $1 for the bandstand. Emily Breitner, in memory of Norm Breitner, $100 for the bandstand. Matthew Zoig and Shannon Elliott, $500 for heating. Mary and John Diesling, $100 for heating. The Island Community Church, $2,000 for heating. Elaine Bauer, $50 for heating. Kennebec Savings, $500 for heating. Sophie and Cassie Perot, $100 for heating. Robin and Jean Brooks, $50 for heating. Thomas and Amy Heibel, otherwise Spike and Amy Heibel, $200 for the bandstand, for a total of $5,314.72 for the bandstand, Cliff Trail $120, and for heating $6,905.
Excellent.
How are we doing on heating assistance money? We doing all right?
Good question. The recreation folks have been doing a great job keeping up with that. I just don't have the data in front of me. I don't know if you have any statement. I think it's been similar to past years.
It's been similar, and we have 20,000 to use for ARPA, so.
I move we accept those donations.
Second.
All in favor?
Right?
Now, last but not least, Mary Meeting Shellfish.
Yes, so the location where Running Tide was formerly located at Mitchell Field, the town now has a lease with Mary Meeting Shellfish. And as part of that lease, the town of Harpswell required Mary Meeting Shellfish to put in subsurface wastewater disposal and a water supply system. We're going to need to amend the lease and allow for more time. That was supposed to be done within the first year. We're coming up on the first year sometime in January. However, Mary Meeting Shellfish is prepared to drill a well with the town's approval, and you've been provided with the location of that proposed well site. Apparently, the company that's willing to do it said that they're soon putting their drilling equipment away for the winter, and so they want to do it as soon as possible.
What?
Something like that.
Really?
I don't know. There was a real
Whoever heard of
urgency
such
to
a thing?
this. I
I've not.
there's something about, maybe it, I don't know. I thought that's what I heard. So we asked Mary Meeting Shellfish to put together a plan that showed the town where the proposed septic system would be. And we just received that on December 17th. We received a letter from Mary Meeting Shellfish. It showed us the location of the proposed septic system, and that is in an area that they're not currently leasing. So we will need to have a lease amendment to enable that area to be used for that purpose. But at this time, the request is for permission to drill the well in the location that's proposed. Mary Meeting Shellfish is responsible for all costs associated with this, including the DEP's requirement that there must be PFAS testing. And if there is a certain level of PFAS that is found in the water, it will have to be treated regardless of whether or not it's going to be used for potable water. If it exceeds a certain level, I think it's 20, I don't know, parts per trillion might be the right standard. But if it exceeds that, they're going to be required to treat it, even if it's going into a septic system and not being used for potable drinking water purposes. So Mr. Nixon knows all this. He could not be here tonight at the meeting, but he's asking for the town's permission to proceed. And I do think it needs to be conditioned on, him following the DEP guidelines for the PFAS testing.
I will so move, and we don't need to change the lease because looks like he's going to get it in.
We don't at this time, but
like he'll get it in
he
time.
also needs to do the septic system, and he's not
Well,
going
that'll
to
come
do
to
that
us
until
later.
the spring.
Yeah.
But you're probably going to see an amendment in January.
But it looks like he'll get the well in time.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I'm curious to see what the water's like.
Yeah, really, no, yeah. They did find PFAS up by the community garden because it was a surface well, and that happens to be where the foam house was, and that's where all the PFAS was, so.
Uh-oh, everything
So
runs
maybe
down.
we'll
Water
luck
runs
out.
downhill.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Ask any plumber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Public comment? Other business?
The select board typically in January will have a reconciliation meeting with the Budget Advisory Committee. And the Budget Advisory Committee held its last meeting this past Monday. They have set a date contingent on it working for the select board. One select board member, the actual liaison, won't be there, but she has attended every single meeting and is well aware of the budget details. So that date would be January 8th at 3 p.m. Would that work for the board?
Let me check my schedule. Yeah, turns out.
3:30. That's a Wednesday.
Wednesday at 8. Yeah, I guess I could do that.
At 3.
At 3.
I thought you said
Wednesday,
8.
the
January
8th.
Oh, the 8th at 3. I knew there was an 8 in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
3 o'clock on the 8th.
Perfect.
You good? In that case, if nobody's got anything else, we're adjourned.